Okay, you all should be seeing the financial teaching moments for kids. Hey, Brittany, is there a way for me to expand this so that I can see like the whole dashboard um, on WebEx? Is there a way to do that? I always struggle with this part.
Yeah, for sure. So, as far as like viewing on your end on your end, are you wanting to see the participants as well? Is that what you're hoping for?
Yeah, I know we can get chat open and it will like stand alone. Oh, there's a button called more panels. No, I
Yeah, so you can actually, if you stop sharing, you can edit the way that you see folks on your, hold on, let me find it as if I'm going to present.
is it
So
layout
when you
more?
present, it should split into like a mini screen as far as your icon and then the chat. But on there, there should be three buttons, like a three-button selection, and then that should allow you to select how you view that presentation. If you wanted, you can also send it to me really quick and I can share that so you can see everyone else as well. Does not matter.
Let me try one more time.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Always a good learning opportunity.
Oh, isn't it? That's what we're here for today. We're here to learn. So I'll just take a second to introduce myself if you don't already know me. My name is Cas Fuentes. I work here at Mountain America Credit Union. I just passed my 6-year mark working in this role as a financial education manager. And we've been working with Salt Lake County now for a few years. Brittany, I remember like when you had your son and what an exciting time that was. And so, yeah, today we are going to talk a bit about kids and what we can do to help our kids start to think about money in a way that's healthy and help kind of create some learning experiences for them um, that will really shape the way that they look at money and the way that they manage their money down the road. So, as Brittany mentioned earlier, because we are a smaller group, I would really love for everybody to participate and really make this a conversation. I assume, and I may be wrong here, so feel free to correct me. But because you are here, you are likely a parent. And so you probably have some experiences that are worth sharing in addition to what I've prepared today. And I just invite you to do so. If you're not quite comfortable coming off of mute or, speaking, that's totally okay. I'll have the chat available as well, where you can put some information or respond to questions there. So, what specifically are we going to talk about when it comes to financial teaching moments for kids? Well, one of the things that we talk a lot about when we talk about money as adults, and you've probably seen it if you've attended our presentations before, is we talk about money scripts. And so I'm not going to spend so much time today talking about what a money script is, but I'm more so going to spend time talking about how it influences our children and what we can do to help them have effective money scripts so that they can be good money managers as they reach their adulthood. We'll also talk about the difference between implicit and explicit learning experiences. This is going to help you as you are, thinking of ways that you can teach your kids about money. You'll be able to, use this knowledge of implicit and explicit learning experiences, not just as awareness, but it will help you shape those experiences so that you can achieve the outcome that you're looking for, which is helping your kid better understand certain principles around money. We're going to talk about the why, what, and how model. And again, if you've attended Money in the Brain or Everyday Financial Success or Prioritize Spending, we've talked through this model, but let's talk about what it can look like for our kids and how we can teach that to them. And then lastly, we're going to talk about emotions and how do we teach our kids to recognize those emotions and how they influence our financial decisions. So in some ways, we're going to kind of review some of the information that we've talked about. Maybe it's been several months now. But we'll also talk about how do we frame this information for our kids so that they can learn as well. So starting first, we're going to get into our money scripts. Now, before we can teach our kids about money, obviously we got to have knowledge of our own money scripts. And it's important for us to have this because our money scripts are going to impact the way that we teach our kids, and in some cases, whether or not we teach our kids. There are different money scripts in terms of like what we believe when it comes to money and children, that can impact the way that we teach. And so really, when we understand our money scripts, we're going to be able to take those opportunities to learn some new concepts that may not just affect our financial success, but it might turn into a generational thing where it impacts your children and their children, which is really kind of a cool experience if we're thinking about, a positive change. So first thing I want you to do is I want you to look at these money scripts that you see here. And I want to know if any of these are feeling familiar to you. These are just examples of common money scripts, but I want you to think about them. And if there's one that sticks out, feel free to come off of mute and share. And let's kind of go from there.
I definitely think I've experienced, if I could make X amount of dollars a year, I would be happy. I think going into the profession that I chose, that perspective shifted, but that was definitely one that I grew up with. And that like you've made it when, and then there's certain items that tie to that. I mean, we still have silly ones now as I've grown a little bit older, me and my husband, but it is the truth. Sometimes you get stuck in that materialistic idea of happiness and trying to like live outside of your means. I've definitely experienced that.
Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. And I liked that you called out that it's something that you picked up in your childhood. Because that was going to be my follow-up question is, where did you pick that up, right? And I ask that because, again, in a lot of cases, we have these money scripts, and we unknowingly kind of pass these down, right? And some of them can be really helpful, and others can be maybe not. Like you, Brittany, if I could make X dollars a year, I remember being at a point where it was like, if I can just make this much money every single year between my spouse and I, we will be great. We will be so good. And then we like every time that number just like next number, right? And the thing is we can't live our lives like that, constantly chasing the next thing, because there's always some kind of trade-off in that, right? And sometimes it's as simple as just failing to recognize how cool it is that we've made it to this point, and enjoying that, if we're constantly thinking about what we can achieve. Another example so that I want you to think about specifically when it comes to what we think about our kids and money, are things like kids don't need to worry about money when they're young, or I don't really need to teach them because they're going to learn about it in school. Or even I'm not good at money, and so I don't want to teach my kids because I don't want to teach them bad habits, right? And these are all, I think to an extent, these are all valid. Obviously, the concern of like not wanting to stress your kids out with money. Remember, that kind of goes back to money scripts, right? You may have that perception that money is stressful and you don't want to pass that on. Kids do learn about money at school, but I will tell you, our high school kids, they are getting a semester in high school. That's all they're required to take in order to better understand how to manage money as an adult. And the teachers who do it, they do a great job. They're putting our kids in what they call is real world classrooms, where they're having to basically buy their desk, and then they have to pay for things, like with this money that they're earning, and basically manage money within that classroom, which is incredible. But again, we don't have enough time, or we don't give them enough time to really get the hang of it, and get the coaching that they need. And then the idea that we're not good at money and therefore we cannot teach our children, I feel like that's just like a missed opportunity as a parent, right? If you feel like you're not good at money, sit back and kind of take a look to understand what it is that you think your opportunities are, and then do the research. And if your kid is old enough, you can even bring them into that. Hey, come learn about this with me and let's talk about it, right? You can always work with a financial guide or a financial coach, like us. We're happy to meet with you and talk through things, and see if we can get you into that place where you are feeling more comfortable. But if you feel like you're bad at money, I would say that's an opportunity to really lean into so that you are prepared to talk to your kids. So, what are we doing in order to prep for this conversation or the conversations that we'll have throughout our children's lives? Well, I would say, again, these are ongoing, but kind of keep tabs on your money scripts and evaluate within your money scripts what is true and maybe what hasn't been proven for you. Going back to that, the go-to example of money script is credit cards are bad. How do you know that they're bad? Have you had an experience where maybe you've had a hard time? Do you know other people who have had success with credit cards and have been able to manage those? And what's the difference? And is it something where you could potentially try something different to see if the outcome changes? And so that's kind of something that I would encourage you to do if you're not already familiar with your money scripts, is really take some time to list those out. You can do it in as little as 2 to 3 minutes, where you do like a free write. I love pen and paper for this kind of thing because it forces my brain to slow down just a little bit, where I'm having to write things down. But even if you wanted to, many of us have like a voice recorder on our phones now. You could just talk, and then go back and listen to it and pick things out, and then start to evaluate how those are impacting your behavior. Any questions before we move on and we talk about how to create some implicit and explicit learning experiences?
I'm not seeing any either in the general chat or my direct chat quite yet.
Okay, that's all right. So when we get to implicit and explicit, there's a couple, these words are kind of funny to me. I grew up in the 90s, and I feel like many of the CDs that I begged my parents to buy for me had that explicit label on them, right? And so for me in my brain, I've got like this like parental advisory label, but that's not quite it. Implicit really goes to this idea that it's happening without our awareness. So we can see this in the example of like implicit biases, for example, where we have an idea or an attitude or a bias, and we're not really aware of it, but it still influences our behavior. And then explicit is where it is very obvious that we're aware that it's happening, and we're even trying to be intentional and shape it. Okay, and so when we talk about implicit and explicit learning, there is a difference there, and understanding that difference can help us have awareness, and it can also help us shape those learning experiences for our kids. Okay, now what you're seeing up here is kind of a mess. But I want to tell you a story, and if you've heard this from me before, I'm sorry that you get to hear it on repeat. But it is still just such an incredible example. So years ago, we had COVID happen, and at the time I was, working out in a gym with a friend. I was going to a kickboxing class that I loved, and I was kind of getting a feel for some functional fitness, kind of CrossFit things. And then COVID shut down everything, and so I was allowed to take a pair of dumbbells home that I rented from my gym, and do workouts at home. So I found this program online that I absolutely love, and I still use it today. But they basically programmed everything for me, and all I had to do was go out and do it. So what you're seeing on I think it's the left side of your screen, it's the left side of mine, is my workout, where I wrote 7 rounds, 200-meter run to the fire hydrant, and then 15 back squats, and then maximum devil's press, until the timer ran out, and then we stopped, we did it again. That was my workout, and I would do these 3 to 4 days a week. And this was just kind of my thing. I'd go out in the garage, I'd turn on my music, I'd go do the workout, kind of get some quiet time, and then put myself back together to go and mom and, be an employee and be with my kids. Well, it was interesting because one afternoon I came out and I saw this on my wall where it says kids only, kids workout, shred shed. And then it had a list of workouts. It had sit-ups, push-ups, run. He had squats on there, mountain climbers. But then he had a couple that he made up. He made up something called a steamroller, and he also made up something called the yeet, which I thought was funny because, like, I hadn't told him anything. I wasn't like, hey, buddy, go out and write this workout on the wall, or, come up with some new moves. Like, this was not something that I pushed him to do. Really, I didn't talk about it, right? This was just for me, these 7 rounds of workout. This was just my thing. But it caught me by surprise when that happened, because it was like, we haven't even talked about this, but here he is. He's mimicking it. This is an example of implicit learning. He's watching his mom do all these things, write a workout on the wall, turn on the music, go do the workout, right? He's watching all of this and he's learning about how to do this. And it's funny because I'm like, this is probably a better workout than I could ever drum up that he created. But here's what we know. Most research is showing that we learn from observation. So like that, I kind of knew. I have a background in education. That's what my master's is educational psychology. So I knew this, right? Research shows we learn from observation, no big deal. But this still caught my eye and it surprised me. And it was a great reminder that our kids are watching us and they're learning from us, even when we are not actively teaching them. Okay. And so I want you to think about that in the context of money, right? Our implicit learning is really happening when we're not aware of it. It's happening in an informal environment. And it's also based on, what they're watching us do. So it's based on our responses and the environment that's surrounding the learner. Another example of this that you might see that's not related to money would be something like when a child learns to blow on their food before they eat it, right? Sometimes what happens is they will put the food in their mouth and then they burn their mouth and they're like, oh, right? But eventually, after watching what mom or dad is doing, they're like, oh, I need to blow on that first. And so it's kind of interesting to see that. So when we talk about this in the context of learning, what do you think are some environments where your kid might be learning about money in like the implicit context, where it's not actually set up for them to learn, it's just happening? Go ahead and take yourself off of mute or put it in the chat. What are some situations where your children are experiencing implicit learning about money? Okay, we're getting some stuff in the chat. So if we're arguing about it and they hear, yeah, that's interesting, because they can make some associations about the way we perceive money, right? They might even make their own assumptions. Maybe money is stressful, as an example. And I would say it's common for people to have disagreements about money. And so that's kind of a reality. I think it's more of like how we're approaching those conversations that can shape that. Yeah, with the way that everything is more expensive, right? And with the way we talk about inflation and our kids are hearing about it on the news, if we're digging in on, like sometimes my kids overhear my videos that I'm watching on social media, and they'll be like, wait, what? And they want to get into it. So, but it's interesting how aware they are, especially as they start to get older. How we're stopping at the grocery store when we make comments about the price or the brands we select. Yeah, absolutely. Those are perfect examples that we encounter. Grocery store, gas station, the car wash, and using quarters. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like even, I think some kids truly believe that the debit card or the credit card is this is money to them, right? In a lot of cases. And so to have them see something like quarters, they're like, wait, what? And so that's kind of a fun thing too. Collecting change and chores. Yes. Oh my gosh. My kids are like so ingrained in like the do you have a job I can do? Because that's in their mind, that's how they earn their money. Yep. Is this too many bucks, Mama? That's cute. Yeah, that is so interesting because again, our kids are watching us. And so I think again, this is that perfect area of, what can we do to be more aware of, you know, what we're doing and what we're saying because we're building up those money scripts for our kids. Um, and right now I feel like it's a tricky thing. But I think there's some things that we can balance out with, right? And that's where we get into the explicit learning. So explicit learning is the opposite of implicit learning. Essentially, this is an intentional learning experience, often happening not necessarily in a formal environment, but it's planned. You might think of like a school classroom, but honestly, my kitchen turns into a classroom often because it's like, well, this is the best place to lay this out and talk about it, right? Or this is the best place to demonstrate. And I think the other thing that's kind of cool with explicit learning is the question of, can we actually test what somebody has learned? And I'm not saying like teach your kid a concept about money and then make them sit down and like, fill in 13 bubbles to indicate whether they understand the questions that you're asking, but more so just, can I ask them questions that they can answer to demonstrate that they understand some of these things? And so explicit learning is interesting because in a formal sense, yes, you would have like a whole plan that's drawn out. You would have a series of concepts that you would teach in a specific order. And I would say that between explicit and implicit learning, if we're building out these opportunities for our kids to learn, it may not be entirely explicit, right? Like we have these ideas of things that we want to talk to our kids about, or when the moment arises, we can meet that. And we can kind of build that out and think through it. And so like if you were to say this is like exactly explicit learning, I might say, well, I'm not going to make somebody sit down and take a test over something. Actually, I don't know. I have a 16-year-old. My kids span from 9 all the way up to 16 right now. I have 5, and I think like one of my 16-year-old was having a little bit of tough time with his grades, and he just thought he was gonna just like I don't know. It's hard not to get like frustrated about it because he was in such a funk. But I had to show him like you realize that you are going to have to do well in school so that you can graduate, you can continue going to school, or you can go get a job. But you've got to continue growing, and eventually you have to support yourself, and it's going to cost a good amount of money. And see, and even me, I have to watch what I say because I'm telling my kids like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive to live in the world right now, you guys. And I might be terrifying my children. Just the other day, I was having a conversation with my daughter at the dinner table. She's 13. And she was like, well, how much do I need to earn if I want to live by myself? And so we walked through, the cost of rent. We walked through the cost of food, what it takes to drive a car, and, if she wants pets and kids. And she was like, oh my gosh. And again, it was like, this isn't to scare you, but this is to really kind of help you be aware of what you need to know. And so another thing, if you have kids that are, like I would say over 8, we have some different resources that can help you create these explicit learning experiences. Yes, the Game of Money is one of those. And I would say that this is for like older teenagers. I think you could start as young as maybe 13 to doing that one. It's an idea of these kids are answering these questions as if they are like 28. And so it's allowing them to, choose where they want to live, what kind of car they want to drive. They'll have some awareness of the bills that they'll pay. They get to decide what kind of TV package they want. We've tried to do a realistic pricing for all of that so that they can really see what it costs to live in the world. And so that one's really fun. Brittany, are we doing that for your group in the next little bit?
We are. We're doing it in September.
Yes.
So
awesome.
We'll send that out to those that have attended the financial wellness workshops before.
Yeah, and that'll be fun. That's one where you get to bring your kids, and I'm not gonna lie, it's really fun watching kids' reactions to like, oh my gosh, it's really this much. You know, because I don't know, my kids, they want to have every streaming service in the book. And I'm like, you guys, no, I'm not gonna spend that much money. And when they start to see what it actually is, that's when they're like, oh, okay, never mind. For kids that are younger than 13, Bonsai Junior is another option. This is completely free to you. And this is actually available on, you guys have a co-branded page specific to Bonsai. And there's tons of resources on there. There's stuff for adults, but there's also things for kids. So they do have like a game that's for young teenagers and older teenagers and even adults. But this Bonsai Junior is targeted for kids that are 8 to 12. And it's fun because they get to learn how to build a lemonade stand and how to earn money and then what to do with that money. So they get to like they get an IOU from mom for ingredients to make lemonade. They also learn about envelope budgeting, where they're taking certain amounts of money and setting it aside for specific expenses or things that they know are coming up. And then how to manage unexpected expenses. And like that is in almost every budget conversation I have, that's one of the things that people say derails them or makes it hard to stay on budget is when things that are unexpected come up. And so if we can start to teach those things to our kids early on, then we're really preparing them to plan ahead, and we can even teach them strategies to get ahead of those things. And then sales tax. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in stores with my kids where I say, hey, we only get, X amount of dollars to spend on whatever. And they'll come up to me and it's like right at the dollar line. And I'm like, no, you got to worry about sales tax too. I'm not mom, I'm kind of mean. But I do make them pay sales tax. And so, the first time my kids learned about that, we were in Target in the toy aisle and I had a raging kid. It was not the best moment to teach him about that. This would probably have been a better way. So checking in really quick, any questions about implicit and explicit learning? Okay. Well, then let's go through and let's talk about the why, what, and how. If you have questions at any time, feel free to pop off a mute or put them in the chat and I will come back and answer them. If you're not already familiar with the why, what, and how model, I like to think of this as like the financial planning and accountability model. Really what I love about it is that it helps you kind of ground yourself in the things that are most important to you, and then really building an action plan from there. But before I break into that too far, let me read this quote to you. This is from Kristen Welch. As she says, as hard as it might be, we have to let our kids fail because it's the only way that they're going to learn to succeed. And I think when we watch our kids with money, especially if I don't know, sometimes I watch my kids with money and I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't do that. Like, that's not a good idea, but it's not up to me, right? And they have to learn. And so I have this picture up because I think so often, like I have a kiddo who gets very caught up in the moment. He is into airplanes and he is like getting these models and he will spend he'll spend $15 on a model and then he's upset because he didn't get to get the other things that are needed with it. And it's like, okay, well, you can come back later and you can pick that up, but today this is what we're getting, or this is what you got. And so in those situations, I think one of the best things that we can do is we can guide them, right, by using this model with them, helping them understand, what is really important to you. Like this is, and it's not always easy as like talking to a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old, right? Because I know my 9-year-old, he'd be like, well, the things that are most important to me, my why, video games. Like I want Roblox money, and lives for Roblox, right? And so like, it's a little bit harder to connect to the why, but I think it can be a really great conversation with them simply by asking questions like, well, what do you value? And showing them the words that go along with it. When you can kind of help them start to understand, what their values are, and even kind of call upon maybe your family values, which can be a really great activity as well. And it can also help you set up for like conversations about rules. But like when you come back to your values and kind of drive that, then we can come back and say, well, hang on, how does this decision help with this value, right? And a lot of our kids are going to say that their value is fun. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because they're kids, they should be allowed to have fun. The what in the column is really all about goals. So it's really about, what are you doing that's going to help you feel fulfilled and happy with your money? And I think this is still important to teach our kids because I don't know, my kids, they don't earn a ton of money. They're doing a lot of chores and, for them, like, I don't know, I just feel like they don't get a lot of money. They do things, but then maybe they do get a lot of money. Anyway, so teaching them about SMART goals is a really great thing to help as they're building out their goals, right? Because then it's not just, I want to save $50 for this new Lego set. It's, I'm going to set aside, $5 from every time I do a job of $10. I'm going to set 5 of that aside and I'm going to build it up over time until I get to that $50. And they can even set time around this. And so this is interesting because my same kiddo who loves planes recently got an RC plane. RC plane was a little over $100 and he had about $60 saved. So we did the Bank of Mom loan with him, where he was able to, put his $60 down. We matched with the remaining amount and then told him, you've got to pay this amount in, 4 weeks. And he's a pretty busy kid. We're able to assign out different jobs, and my co-parent and I, we talked pretty explicitly about what we were going to do to make this happen. Now, here's where it gets interesting, right? So we've got the specific, he needs to pay a certain amount within 4 weeks in order to pay off this debt. And then he's all like, is it relevant? Is it time bound? Is it measurable, attainable? Yes, all of those things, right? Because co-parent and I have worked together to make sure that he can achieve this. And so we've set this goal for him, but then things happen. So he got this RC plane and within 2 days, he had broken both of the little propellers that come with it. So the RC plane can't fly right now. And of course, we've been talking a lot about, well, your goal is to repay on your loan. But he's over here saying, but wait, I have this other priority because I can't fly my plane right now because the propellers are broken. Propellers are like $12. And so, we agreed, okay, that's fair, and in real life, our kids are going to have multiple priorities, right? When they become adults. And so with this one of the things that we did was we basically set it up so for every $3 he earns, he can set aside $1 towards the savings for new propellers. And so he'll get there probably about the same time that he pays off the loan, maybe sooner, probably a lot sooner actually. But the idea here is that, we're teaching and we're kind of thinking through the things to really set him up for success. Now, part of this, right, and these things that, we got to talk about maybe if we're parenting with other parents, and our kid is like, what are the things that could get in the way? Well, what if something gets broken? What if, what if another thing comes up that you want, right? How do we handle that? And so this is where that comes in. Out of curiosity, what are some of the things that you guys have done to teach your kids about money? They can be implicit or explicit examples. Awesome. You're counting different things. Yes, I love that. So like counting pennies. Yeah, and naming each coin. I love that because they may not completely get it. One of my favorite things is but they know it. And so it's kind of a fun thing to watch. In the summertime, Mountain America does like a zoo event where we go out to branches, we bring the Hogle Zoo and some of their little critters, and we play this game with the kids, and we ask them to identify what is a penny, what is a nickel, what is a dime. And you wouldn't believe it, like these bitty kids, you know, who are, they're just like maybe 3, 4, are out there picking out like this is a penny and this is a nickel and this is it, and like it is just so cool to watch, right? And then you've got other kids who can tell you like, oh, 4 quarters equals $1. And so even things as simple as that are a great way to start to, you know, talk to your kids about money. Earning money, one of the things that I did with my kids really early on was a token economy. They'd earn like these wooden tokens and they'd put them in jars, and the jars could be for different things. And so that was kind of cool too. But I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. Does anybody use any apps, like any money apps with their kids? There's all sorts of different apps, and I can tell you a little bit more about them as we get closer to the end. Out of curiosity, what are the age ranges of your kids? Will you put those in the chat so that we can speak to those, so that I can speak to those for you a little bit more if they're helpful? Just while we're covering these last few slides. So emotions and money, right? For many of us as adults, we're still kind of working through this, but it is really helpful for our kids to start to recognize this connection between their money and emotions. And I know that that can feel a little overwhelming sometimes, because sometimes they're still just trying to figure out what their emotions are. I know I've got a kid right now who's like still, you know, we're having to like red, green, and yellow with him to say like, hey, you know, you're green right now, everything is good, yellow when you're escalated, and red when it's time for a break. And we have to call out the color code. So I get it that it's hard to kind of start to affiliate that with money, but it's really helpful, especially in those moments where they are experiencing heightened emotions around money, to kind of explore that with them. What do you think is causing that? You know, well, I'm upset because I didn't get this thing, or I'm upset because I learned about sales tax, like in the example of my son. And sometimes it's not going to happen in the heat of the moment, right? Because I know like my kids, if they're upset, it's not even worth trying to talk to them until they're calm. And so it's okay if, you know, you come back to it and you say, hey, you know, let's talk about what happened there, and kind of help them understand. Something else that can be really beneficial is mindfulness, right? And I think it's funny because people don't expect mindfulness and money to go together, but it really is a powerful tool, because it can help with increased self-awareness and focus, as well as reducing that emotional reactivity to the stressful circumstances. And so, you know, again, when your kids are calm, help them learn some of these coping strategies, like doing the stop or rain or halt. Stop is slow your breathing, take note of what's going on around you and your thoughts and feelings and actions, and then opening yourself up to allow those feelings and just to exist, and then ultimately pursuing your values. That's stop. Rain is similar. Halt is the hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're any of those, you ought to wait until those are satisfied to make a decision. And so again, teaching them, probably not while they're upset, but in a time when they're calm, teaching them how to use that mindfulness, especially in those money situations, or again, in implicit learning, demonstrating those as you're encountering that financial, you know, if you're encountering something that's stressful, teaching them so that they can learn that too. Let's talk a little bit about technology. So I see we've got Laura, you're in the similar situation as me. You've got kids on a broad age spectrum. Couple of you do. Okay. I like it. My kids see the commercials for Rocket Money. Rocket Money is okay. If you ever want to explore some money apps, I've got a couple that I can tell you about. I've used Rocket Money. I don't know. We can talk about it in another, like, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. As far as like, okay, 6-year-old twins and a 12-year-old, yes. Okay, and then older kids and young adults. Cool. So this might be helpful when it gets into teaching children about using technology. So there are apps out there, that are designed for really like 6 to like, I would say 17 years old, that can dig in and teach financial education. They come with a little debit card. And you can like incentivize them for chores and things like that. I would say if you are looking into something like that, make sure that you're just aware of the fees. Some of them are like as low as 3% of, I can't remember now, but some of them charge a percentage of something, and then others are just a flat monthly fee. I know the new Acorns for Kids, I want to say it was like up to $12 for 4 kids. Um, Again, just kind of look at it, make sure it's something that your kids are actually going to use and benefit from. Greenlight is another one that people know a lot about. And again, these are all great, but just make sure that you're getting your money's worth out of them. Some other things to be thinking about, there's a lot of kids that are investing or interested in investing, right? And I'd say overall investing is like a sexy term. People like this idea of making money fast. Who doesn't? And so kids can begin investing when they do like again, Acorns Kids is one that they can use. They can just open up like a UG or a UTMA account, which is like a Gifts for Minors account, and it basically helps with tax exemptions. Puts that money in until the kids turn 18. And so if you have a child under 18, you'd likely put that money in and then they'd be able to access it when they're 18, but they cannot invest without a parent or guardian signing up for them. Because I mean, you're trading, and so there's no guarantee the money will be there. They just want to make sure that there's a parent on board with that. Some other things that can be helpful. For me personally, I have a kiddo who uses a My Express card through Mountain America. I'm never here to push products, but free 99 is never a bad deal in my opinion. And so for me, that's just something that works. It's attached to mine and my co-parents account that we share, and we push money back and forth for our kids. And it's super easy because we can just log in and transfer money to cover it. Cool, your kids all have the My Express cards. I love that. And what I love about it is if the money isn't available on the card, they can't charge more than what's available on the card. So it's really difficult for them to run it into the negative. That's not to say people have told me it's impossible. It's not impossible. Like there's no such thing. But it is a bit more challenging compared to like a regular checking account. And so it is nice. And then you can always set alerts and notifications to kind of keep track of things as well. And so that's super helpful. And, it makes me laugh because my kiddo, when school's in session, he'll call me because they've got their school store that they use to raise money for the school, and he'll call me at lunch. Hey, Mom, can you, transfer $5 over for this? And, usually I'm willing to do that, but that's sometimes where some of our money conversations happen as well. And so it's kind of a cool opportunity to get involved with that technology with your kids. So as we wrap up today, I've got a few things for you. I love that Salt Lake County does this for you guys, and you're able to come in and sit at, in over your lunch to learn. It really shows a lot about how much companies care about their employees when they're coordinating things like this, so that you guys can have hopefully less financial stress at home, specifically with your financial wellness program. If you haven't already, I encourage you to identify your money scripts. And if you've already identified your money scripts, maybe that can be a conversation that you have with your kiddos is, what do you believe about money? And how do you think that might affect your behavior, especially because some of us have kids that are, older than 12. Those are really cool conversations, and it's amazing to see what your kids pick up. Look at what the explicit learning opportunities are. If your kids are out of school, put them on Bonsai, give them something to do, and challenge them to beat the games. It's funny how competitive kids will get. I have a kiddo, he played it, and he actually he ended up with more money than me at the end of the game. It was a little bit depressing. I was like, good for him. Look at the why, what, and how model, and start to have conversations around what your family values are and what your kids' individual values are, and how those things begin to affect their behavior. And what's fun about that is it's not just a conversation around money, right? It's a conversation about how they are in general. and how their values influence their behavior just in general. It's a really cool awareness thing. And then if you can, look at involving your kids in your budgeting process, even if it's, you know, small things. You take them grocery shopping, or you have them plan, maybe it's a night at home together, you know, and you have them plan like, here's what we need for snacks, and here's what, you know, if I'm gonna rent a movie on Amazon or Google, this is what it's gonna cost, right? Give them a budget and have them work within it. Don't send your kids school shopping on, you know, don't, like, my dad did that once. He sent me school shopping, he gave me money, and I came back and I had a really rockin' pair of boots and nothing else. He was not happy. So maybe not that, but involve your kids in that process as it's coming up. And then lastly, like I said, check out Bonsai. Tons of different resources on there that you can use. They are all free for you to access. And then lastly, I mentioned one-on-one financial coaching. If you feel like this is something that you would benefit from, or you want your kids to get involved with, to start creating goals or budgets, whatever it may be, this is really a cool way. With kids under 18, we do ask that the parents are online, but we're happy to meet with them and talk with them. This is completely free. You don't have to be a member of the credit union. We're not going to push products or services. We're really just there to kind of understand what they're wanting to work towards and help them build a plan to move forward. So with that being said, I want to thank you for staying on with us today, and hopefully we've given you some things to think about and things that the link was broken. I'm sorry. Let's just have you use that, this one. Go to oncehub.com/Fined. Use this link instead. That will get you to where you want to go, to that scheduler. And then, yeah, if there's ever anything that you want to reach out about, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. I've dropped my email in the chat there. And if there's anything else, please let us know. But I'll turn the time back over to Brittany.
Thank you so much, Cass. I really enjoyed the conversation around implicit and explicit learning opportunities. It gives us a good opportunity to reflect on what our kids are learning, as well as our money scripts and how those are translating into our lives, whether we acknowledge them or we don't, right? We all have them. And so I really do appreciate that good reality check, but also an opportunity for us to improve our financial wellness as well as our kids for the future. I know that any education that my parents provided to me surrounding financial wellness gave me a really good start to the situation that I found myself in today, as well as the education that I learned from a young age. So it does make a difference, I promise you. And I'm sure Cass can attest to that, as well, as she is teaching all things financial wellness, and there's some serious power and importance in the topic. I did want to plug as well, if you do complete any financial wellness coaching with MACU or URS, please contact our employee wellness program. So you can reach out to me or our employee wellness email, and we give points for that. So if you have completed that in the past or are going to, please let us know, and we'd like to award you for doing that in the way that we can, and that's through offering points. So again, thank you all for attending today. Thanks, Cass, so much for spending time with us each month. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.